Hello again, and welcome to another episode of A Badge Well Worn. I'm James Mitchell, and I will be your presenter today. I don't have a guest, but I've got a story to talk about. It's going to deviate a little bit from my normal storytelling. Um, this one involves a homicide in Martin County, Florida, where I happen to be a resident. I've been following this case for some time, and quite frankly, I was quite impressed with the law enforcement response and the investigation that followed. And I'm going to do something else that I don't particularly like to do, but I think I need to, in the interest of getting everything stated properly. I want to read several different accounts of this homicide in the local newspapers, and I want to give credit and uh, attribute the articles to the authors. The reason I want to do this is because there's a couple different slants or views on this homicide that, and I just wanted you to be able to sort through what I had to sort through and find some of the salient issues in this case. I think you're going to find it really interesting. I did, and so here we go. This first article is dated September 28th, 2018. It's from the TC Palm or Treasure Coast newspaper, and the author was Lori K. Blandford. Martin County. The more sheriff's detectives learn about Stephen Williams after he confessed to killing his ex-wife, Tricia Todd, the more they looked at him as a possible sociopath. Through interviews with his family and in her own journals, detectives found Williams had been known to hurt and kill pets throughout his life, said the sheriff's detective Michael Oliver. For somebody to do that to an animal, Oliver said, who's to say he won't do that to a human being? Williams is scheduled to be sentenced in Martin County Court Friday, but he may not end up in prison. He's been examined by doctors to see if he's competent to proceed with that sentencing, and a judge is expected to decide his fate. If he's found to be incompetent, according to state rules of criminal procedure, Williams could be transferred to a mental health facility for treatment in hopes of him one day being competent enough to be sentenced for killing Todd. I'm going to walk away just for a second from quoting from this article, and I'm just going to make an observation to listeners. There are some issues with insanity defenses that would rule out an insanity defense. For example, a sociopath is not considered to be insane. And, insane is a legal term. So when we talk about sociopaths, although there's some psychological issues, it's not an insanity defense. So I just wanted to state that. I'm not an attorney, but I am a former cop, and I found that a lot of these people that are charged with homicide often offer a insanity defense, and so I've lived through a few of these. I'm going to go back on the record here, reading from the T.C. Palm article, Death Investigation. Todd last was seen alive on April 26th. Sheriff officials began an extensive search for the 30-year-old Treasure Coast hospice nurse in the Hobe Sound area where she lived with her brother, Josh Todd, after she didn't pick up her and William's 4-year-old daughter, Faith, from a babysitter the next day. At this point, although this article doesn't say this, Williams and Todd had been divorced for approximately 1 year, and supposedly their divorce was amicable. Back on the record. Detectives, including Oliver, interviewed Williams at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina, where he had just returned after visiting his daughter in Hobe Sound. Williams voluntarily took a polygraph test, but officials said nothing in it or the interview indicated he may have been involved in Todd's disappearance. After detectives watched hundreds of hours of surveillance videos from businesses along US 1 from the night of Todd disappeared, they poked holes in Williams' story, and Oliver said detectives then returned to North Carolina to interview Williams again. Off the record, and I just want to insert at this point my personal observation is that the Martin County Sheriff's Office was extremely diligent and persistent in walking the route of where this murder took place within 2 or 3 miles in either direction, interviewing all of the businesses and residents and collecting video from them from the night of the disappearance of Tricia Todd. And they hit a bonanza of evidence, which we'll get to in a few minutes. I thought that was extremely noteworthy, and it's something above and beyond what I see routinely in homicide investigations to deploy that much energy and resources into the investigation virtually for miles along a major highway. Back on the record, Williams told detectives everywhere he went that night and the next day with indoor surveillances in mind. I think what they're trying to say here is that he was trying to point the investigators to areas where he might have been seen in support of his alibi. Oliver said, but Williams failed to think about the video from the outside of the businesses. Once we started showing him, we knew the timeline of what he did and where he was at. That's when he started breaking and changing from the first story he told us. As soon as I said video, he started shaking. Williams confessed on May 24th, and he struck a plea deal to avoid spending the rest of his life in prison. He was charged with second-degree murder after attorneys agreed to limit his sentence to 35 years in prison. He was also charged with child neglect because he left their daughter alone while he disposed of Todd's body. Attorneys agreed to the plea deal so Williams would show the officials the location of Todd's body. He took them to an area of the John C. and Mariana Jones Hungryland Wildlife Environmental Area in Martin and Palm Beach counties in Florida. They dug up a container filled with acid and partial remains believed to be Todd's. I'm going to break away from this text again, and I'm just going to say that before they were able to find this container buried in the preserve, this Williams had taken these officers out to the preserve and failed to tell them exactly where the body had been buried. The next thing I want to tell you is that the entire remains of the victim were not in that container. Only a partial remains, and it's not been specified as what remains were found. I will continue reading. They also found a chainsaw and a reciprocating saw and pliers that may have been used in Todd's death, as well as 9 human teeth. So what we have here is an individual who used pliers to pull the teeth from this victim, and I suspect the reason for that was so she couldn't be identified through dental charts. There's a discussion in this article about sociopathic tendencies. I'm not going to quote from them. As I said to you, being a sociopath is a good indicator, a clue as to what motivates an individual to commit a crime. And the fact that it's pretty well known that sociopaths really don't have a conscience. that they start demonstrating some of these tendencies at an early age in life. Bedwetting, animal torture, killing animals, these kind of things are consistent with a sociopathic tendency. So I'm going to just move along here. Another interesting item that I found, the detectives got a hold of the victim's computer, and they did a very thorough search of the contents of the computer, and they found a diary basically telling the detectives about her and Stephen Williams' relationship, especially getting into their pets. Oliver said. The diary mentioned Williams by name, and Oliver said Todd wrote about how he and Williams would go and get into arguments, how she thought he was cheating on her, and at one point, what she thought happened to be her dogs and cat. Her dogs passed away, and she had concerns. Nothing specific, but she had concerns that Stephen might have poisoned them, Oliver said. Todd wrote about how Williams killed her cat during the beginning of their relationship, which he admitted. Williams told detectives one day that while Todd was at work, the cat got out of the house, and Oliver said William went to grab the cat and it scratched him. He got mad, Oliver said, and so he just picked up the cat and threw it down on the concrete sidewalk. Detectives also interviewed Williams' parents and said that her son had to move out of his apartment complex when he was about 9 years old because he had killed two wild ducks there, Oliver said. He also had abused the family dog. So there we go. I'll back off the record here for a moment, but we're talking about potentially sociopathic tendencies, not insanity here. Williams' defense attorneys filed a motion in July to have doctors examine his mental condition according to court records. Williams has remained, in the Martin County Jail without bail since he confessed. It goes on to say the mental health professional is required to submit a written evaluation on his mental condition to the prosecution and defense within 30 days of the order. So that was done, and long and the short of it is, they found him competent. Right? He was then sentenced to the 35 years in jail for the death of Tricia Todd. Now I'm going to read to you from the Treasure Coast Palm, or the TC Palm. Again, Lori Blanford was the author of this, and it's dated 9/30/16. David Todd embraced Jack Williams, Jr. on Friday afternoon inside the county courthouse after Stephen Williams was sentenced to 35 years in prison for killing his ex-wife, Tricia Todd. I just wanted to tell him that I'm sorry for all the trouble his son has been through, said David Todd, Tricia's father. Stephen Williams was competent to proceed with his Friday afternoon sentencing after the defense attorneys requested a mental health evaluation while he was in jail. Stephen Williams was found guilty on the second-degree murder and child neglect and ordered to serve 35 years on both charges as part of his previous plea deal. He was credited with 130 days served. The state also asked for more than $67,000 to be paid back to Martin County Sheriff's Office to cover the cost of the investigation. Stephen Williams declined to speak during the sentencing phase. I am going to break away from this article because a lot of it's redundant what we covered before, but I do want to cover another article that gets into a little bit of nitty-gritty on some of my concerns. This was from the Daily Crime publication dated November 7th, 2019, and the author is Jerry Brown. Gruesome murder of Tricia Todd by ex-husband Stephen Williams features on the latest episode of Investigation Discovery's true crime series, The Object of Murder. On April 2016, Todd of Hobe Sound, Florida, disappeared, prompting a police search which culminated in Williams confessing to her murder and revealing the whereabouts of her dismembered body to police officers. Todd and Williams had known each other since childhood and had been married for 11 years when they were divorced under amicable circumstances. Family members said their separation was smooth and painless. Her murder by this God-fearing military man is therefore a great surprise. On April 26, Williams had spent the whole day with Todd and their daughters, Faith. He later told officers that he had been trying to pluck up the courage to kill her after Todd had left her daughter with Williams at the Airbnb where he had been staying. Williams texted her to return, and when she did, Williams knocked her unconscious, tied her up, and eventually suffocated her. He then took her body to Hungryland Wildlife and Environmental Area, where he had a tub of acid waiting to dispose of those remains. Police had followed a number of leads, including investigating a new boyfriend of Todd's. However, when the police acquired grainy security footage of Williams driving between Todd's home, that led to his conviction. In other words, all that legwork that these police officers did in compiling that video along Highway US 1 paid off, because at one point at 2 a.m., they had video footage of Williams walking within block or two of the victim's home. And he had previously told the officers in a written statement that he had not been in the area. He denied being anywhere near there. I just want to talk for a moment about the process of a homicide investigation and the resources sometimes it takes to apply to an investigation. Something like this, where maybe dozens of police officers or volunteers are asked not only to search for physical evidence along the route of where the killer may have passed, but also stop and interview residents and businesses, and securing and viewing videotape from each one of these businesses on the night of the missing person report is an ominous task. This took weeks by many, many police officers, and someone had to make a decision, a business decision, to devote that much energy and resources to this investigation. Someone had to sign off and authorize this much resources out there, and it was through these efforts that this case was eventually concluded and a murderer was brought to justice. People have commented about only getting a sentence for 35 years. I just need to share with you that had they not cut a deal with this guy, with Williams, he probably wouldn't have been charged. And if he would have been charged, there's a really good chance that he would have beat the rap, because there would have been no body found. And there's always reasonable doubt when you don't have a body. Defense attorneys are going to argue, maybe she ran off with her boyfriend. And I mean, it's reasonable to think that that's a possibility. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about some of these deals that are cut. And I'm going to stand behind the police and the state attorney's office in this particular case. Had they not cut a deal, I doubt if this guy would have been charged or brought to justice. So my point here is to say kudos, hats off to the sheriff's office. Good job. These days, there's a lot of people ready to jump on the bandwagon and talk about the bad cops. I want to jump on the bandwagon and talk about a few good ones. And this is a case where there's a few good ones They worked their butts off. So appreciate any comments you got. My email address is a badge well worn at gmail.com. That's a badge well worn, all squished together, no punctuation, lowercase, at gmail.com. Talk to you next time.